Long week.
And we are live. So, welcome to episode 267. That's a 2, that's a 6, and that's a 7 right after that of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. In the house tonight, we've got returning guest Tony D., the local Piney, author of The Pineys. And thanks for joining me. Appreciate seeing you again, man.
Thanks for having me.
You don't plan on producing Joan of Arc back there, do you, in the middle of the stream?
She's right here. She's nice and comfy. She's been a very bad dog today, so let's not disturb her.
Yeah, so let's literally let sleeping dogs lie. Okay.
Yes.
And we've got Michael James from the Divine Will Era YouTube channel. Good to see you again, man. It's been like a whole week. I was starting to worry.
Good to be here. I've been seeing a lot of you lately, but I'm glad to be here to talk Zodiac.
Indeed. And we've got Eric from Hey Internet Eric here. Good to see you again, man. I guess it's been a little bit. But
I was here last week for Young Sherlock.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. We were here for Young Sherlock Holmes. You know, it's funny. I found out that the entire Jeremy Brett, for those that are in the know, the entire Jeremy Brett Adventures of Sherlock Holmes is available on Tubi.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that's fantastic. And I watched the first one, and now I'm in the middle of the second one. And then I found out that the entire DVD series is available there with all the movies. Like, so you can watch complete Hound of the Baskervilles. So I'm thinking about picking that up. That Sherlock stream got me interested in watching Holmes again. So that's always a good thing. Now, one of the things I've always said is that the things that people do in everyday life are far worse than anything you can see in a supernatural horror film. And I find that increasingly to be true as society confronts its many ills today. And the everyday things that you read about now on the internet that probably 50 years ago would have shocked the hell out of everybody. And now, we've just become so desensitized. We just shake our heads. But this film in particular is one I've wanted to talk about for a while. I did a short little video on it maybe about 200 episodes ago, and it didn't really go anywhere, but I've wanted to have a panel discussion on it for a while. And I'm talking about David Fincher's Zodiac. So if you guys are ready to go, shall we get it going?
Yeah, buddy.
Let's do it.
All right. I believe that is inclined for me. That it's time for me to say boogie woogie. I hope that Tony doesn't mind. I'm going to out him a little bit. He has solemnly vowed that he is not the Zodiac killer. So I'm going to go to him first and ask for a quick opinion on what you thought of the film. What did you think of David Fincher's Zodiac? And then we'll do a round robin and then start to get into it a little bit.
You know, it seems like we're watching movies these days and they're so GD awful right now. The new stuff that comes out, all the basics, they F it up. Like some of the most basic things in filmmaking, I've never seen people F it up so badly as most of the films that come out now. 100 million, 200 million, sometimes over $300 million. And they can't get the basics of a film right. And then suddenly I turn on Tubi and watch Zodiac, and it's like I suddenly realized the old guys back in the 80s who used to say, they don't make movies like they used to. And I totally relate to everything they say now.
Yeah.
Because it was like a breath of fresh air watching that movie. The pacing was awesome. Fincher knows how to pace a movie. All the performances was there. The movie was jam-packed with all sorts of interesting characters and asides. And yet it had a narrative that went through the entire thing. And you were taken on a journey that was interesting and compelling. And I just like, oh my God, it looks so easy. And it starred a cast of people that I've seen in these terrible movies now. They're all older and they've been in God knows how many movies with an insane amounts of pay. And it's not even close to this damn thing. And I passed on Zodiac when it came out. I completely passed on it. I said, I don't want to see that. And I got to tell you that the murders that Fincher portrays are very gruesome. I thought they were very gruesome. And at first I was kind of turned off by that. I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I could sit through this. But then I understood why he did it. And I understood a lot of the subtext because it was so well done. It's very clear what the story is, how the Zodiac touches upon people and just destroys everybody's life in some manner, in some small way. And shout out to Robert Downey Jr., who does a supporting bit, but really you're watching it going, oh, why aren't I following that guy? Like, because he's so charismatic, because he puts so much into it. And then he's not the main guy. So you just sort of leave him behind at some point and, move on. But wow, I was really impressed by Fincher. And I just can't understand why these people can't make a decent flick today.
Yeah, likewise. I'll jump in. Likewise, I thought it was great. I thought the filmmaking, to say what Tony was saying.
All right. Fair enough. We'll get into that a bit. I don't know if there's lag here. I can't quite tell.
There was a drag.
Mike, what did you think of the film?
Okay. I experienced a super drag. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Here we go again.
But
Yeah, Mike.
yeah, you can hear me?
I can hear Michael. And
I can hear you.
Tony. Mike, the host, he's on a big lag.
He's on a big lag. Okay.
Yes, compared to the other three.
Gotcha. All right, so Mike will get that message in a few minutes.
How about now?
And then he'll restart. All right, I'm going to keep. Okay, so what I was saying was like, this filmmaking. It to me, it's genius. It's great. It's a complicated script, right? It's jumping up years. You got all these different characters. I feel like if you wrote the script for film school, the professors would say this is too many characters. It's too complicated. But they took this story, which isn't your typical stale, cliched, fits the typical structure, and they made it work. And this outside the box filmmaking that, again, you don't see too much today. Everything has to be, production, routine, what's going to make money. So it's outside. And the one thing I'll say now before I pass it to Hey Internet is that I agree with what Tony said, the gruesome death scenes. And I would even I would say they had a psychological impact. It wasn't that they were gory and it was blood. And it just was that psychological, slow-paced, stalking, the fear that you had, the victims misunderstanding the situation and the horror of being trapped there in this horrible, awkward long situation. It was really effective, really effective.
Yeah, I was super excited. Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, Eric.
Okay. I was super excited to see this one because I'm a big fan of Fincher's early work, whether it's something like Alien 3 and the mess that was, or something like Panic Room or The Game. Seven is one of my favorite films of all time. And me and Mike have discussed a lot of Stephen King here, and he's already said it. It's the humans are the real monsters, and it shows it in this film. And what I really dug about this, other than what both Michael and Tony have already said, is this cast of characters and even the bit parts. You know, Elias Koteas as one of the police detectives. He's in it maybe 10 minutes. He's always fantastic. You know, John Carroll Lynch, the suspect. He's always good. You have, of all people, you have Charles Fleischer. You know, he's a character actor. He's the voice of Roger Rabbit, of all things.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the scariest and creepiest scene in this film. You know what I mean? When he's finding the film reels and going down to the basement. You know, of all people, Roger Rabbit is the scariest character in this movie for me. And it's just like this perfect mixture. And Fincher nails it, and he proves why he's as good as he is.
I think that this is, and are we all caught up now? You can hear me? Okay. Mm-hmm. I think that this is Fincher's best work. One, because it's based on a true story. And so you understand, Zodiac is based on a book by the same name by Robert Graysmith, who was played by Jake Gyllenhaal in the story. This is, the movie is based on the book that he ended up writing, which is perhaps the most frightening book I've ever read, not necessarily because of, or just because of the Zodiac murders or the fact that this guy was never caught, but because the investigation seemed to stir this sort of seedy, almost like demonic or evil underbelly of people who were weeded out as suspects, but were sort of brought into the police's attention. That there were just always all these people out there that were just crazy. And so in the interviews and the years that they spent trying to catch the Zodiac killer and bring him to justice, they ended up encountering countless numbers of very extraordinarily unsettled and unbalanced people. And there's a lot of documentation and anecdotal stories in here about those sorts of encounters. And they're just terrifying. They're just absolutely terrifying. I think that considering how the story jumps from character to character and from year to year, the way that Fincher is able to hold it together for more than 2 hours, the script is just fantastic. There's nothing I would edit out of this, and I've been seeing a lot of movies lately that, have been around the 90-minute mark. And I'm like, yeah, they're coming back into lean movies again, although I have no problem watching 4-hour movies. Lawrence of Arabia is my favorite film. But the longer a movie is, the more difficult it is, I think, to keep the story together. And there are just so many small pieces about this that for those reasons, I think that it is Fincher's best work. Like Tony said, you're getting performances from people who I usually don't. I can't stand Mark Ruffalo. I don't like his performance.
Yes.
I'm not even talking about MCU Mark Ruffalo. I just don't like Mark Ruffalo in general. Mark Ruffalo is fucking fantastic in this.
Yes. Yes, I hate admitting that, but it's true.
And you're like, why isn't he participating in more serious film? I don't think they're making films like this anymore. I mean, it's been about 18 years of Zodiac since they made this film, but you can tell between 2007 and 2025, I'm going to the movies all the time. They aren't making films like this anymore. Fincher's gone off to Netflix series and this and that. Anthony Edwards.
I forgot about him.
As the doctor from ER, who I thought was just fantastic in ER, who was Goose in Top Gun, gets a role here as his partner. He's fantastic. Donald Logue in it. He's fantastic. Elias Koteas. Dermot Mulroney,
Brian Cox.
Brian Cox,
Yeah.
Jake Jill. I mean, it's just chock full. Robert Downey Jr. gives a performance that's just so fucking good in this, that you're like, holy shit, like he's just great. He's just great. Was he Paul?
I figured he was going to be the main character, to be honest. And
Yeah,
he's
me
in the movie,
too.
what, maybe a half hour, 40 minutes pushing it out of
Yeah.
2 hours and 17. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just fantastic in every single second of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and as soon as I saw that the movie was over 2 hours, I was like, "Oh God, no! Is this going to be another long slog where I like get to the 90-minute mark and I'm like, Jesus, when is this thing over?" But it wasn't at all.
No.
I zipped through this movie. It was like time travel. That's the
And the
way
fu-
it should be paced.
The funny thing is that at about every 5 or 10 minutes, you just get this riveting tense scene that just like holds you there, you know. And even if it's something simple like towards the end where it's Jake Gyllenhaal and Mark Ruffalo having breakfast, where he describes how, you know, the waitress who was murdered worked 50 yards away from where Arthur Lee Allen lived. You know, and he's just like, is that true? Yeah, it's acting. It's acting. I love
Less
it.
is more.
I love it. Yeah, less is absolutely more. There's not the gore that you have in some of Fincher's other things, like Seven. I mean, no offense, I know that's your favorite movie, but it's implied.
Mhm.
It's implied. Did any? I mean, there are too many small points. We could sit here and talk this out for hours. But I don't want to do that. I mean, any scenes that jump? How about Tony? Any scenes that jump into your mind as you're like, holy shit, you know, I can't wait, hold on a second. Am I the only one who's seen this before? Is everyone here a first-time viewer?
This was my
Everyone
first
else?
time.
I was, yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, first time.
Okay, so let's I want to hear from you guys. What were the scenes that grabbed you? And anybody's free to go. Tony, if you want to go, anybody.
I like I always say, you know, we always talking like with John's on this, less is more. It's just, and one of the perfect example, Mike, is when we were talking about like midnight mass. It's two people sitting across from each other and talking. My favorite scene is when they're interrogating John Carroll Lynch's character, Alan. And it's just simple things here and there. Oh, they notice that it says Zodiac on his watch. Elias Cortez is staring at his boots, and he's noticing that they might be military boots because that was one of the clues like that we were given earlier on. And it's great. John Carroll Lynch is one of these actors that just pops up, and he usually plays like oddball characters, whether it's, you know, some goofy comedy. He pops up in American Horror Story all the time. But he's an underrated actor, and I think he really held his own with a lot of really good actors in this, whether it be, you know, Elias Koteas, Anthony Edwards, anybody he's in the room with. He held his own, and he's fantastic. But I love that scene where they just pull him in and off the clock, and he's not intimidated by any of these questions, whether he's guilty or not. You know what I mean? He's not showing it. He's not cracking. And I just love how, you know, when the bell rings for them to go home, he's basically like, "Can I go now?" You know what I mean? Like, thanks for wasting my time, guys.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. That was one of my favorite scenes.
I'm not the Zodiac. And if I were, I wouldn't tell you.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
you're like, holy shit, like just off the rocker.
It's kind of paced like a mystery, and
Yeah.
Fleischer is the big surprise, right?
Yes.
Because like you see the interview with Alan and you're like, oh, it's got to be this guy. But then you see in all the evidence that, and you can read about the real case on like Wikipedia and whatnot, and there was a lot of evidence that exonerated this guy for some reason. But there's also a lot of evidence that makes him the most obvious choice. But then when he goes into the basement with Fleischer and he realizes basement, oh my God, what a scene. It's just like, oh my God. Had this been a work of fiction, Fleischer would have been the killer. And that would have been the beginning of the scene where he tries to kill Jake Gyllenhaal, and there's a big chase scene, and Gyllenhaal ends up like pushing, diving across a gap, and Fleischer falls to his death, and they capture him. But man, what a scene! What a scene that was. Every scene in this movie has no fat on it. There's just no fat. There's just so much here to portray. There was so much data for the Zodiac, and it looks like Fincher and the screenwriter really tried to jam it all in. Was he the screenwriter too? I forget. I think he might have been.
He might have been. If anybody wants to Google that up real quick while we're looking, Eric, can I use you as my producer on this one?
Sure.
Yeah, and then I could
you get what you pay for.
And then I could tell you that I watched the movie on Pluto with a crap load of commercials. My gosh! So not only did I get the 2.5 hours, but I got all these commercials. But it still held my attention.
Screenplay was by James Vanderbilt. He wrote Zodiac, The Amazing Spider-Man, and the sequel, and the second Independence Day.
Oh,
and then he's actually Mike. You might be surprised. He wrote a great movie like this, and then he's now more known for the Scream sequels. So take it however you want to.
Well, screenwriters take it on the chin. They,
Yeah. The man's got food. The man's got to eat. He's got a roof over his head. He's working. He's written more screenplays than I have. So I'm trying to be gracious.
And what comes to mind when there's a great movie like this, there's so many other factors, just the casting and just the group of people that click, and things don't make sense. Like, why is this so good? There's just a lot of things going on that are hard to pinpoint as well. But let me tell you a scene. Of course, I think one of the first murder scenes with the couple being tied up, and the guy that's being tied up, he's like, "You don't even have a real gun." And he's like, and he completely just misperceives it. He's still trying to be somewhat cool in front of the girl, and they're tied up, and then the knife comes, that slow, steady stab. That really kind of sucks you into it. And then I want to say that coupled with these very realistic characters, all these characters are so down to earth, so human, from Robert Downey Jr., but especially the inspector with the bow tie, Mark Ruffalo. Him and his wife, the scenes with him and his wife, him being burned out, him being frustrated, him hanging up the phone when he's frustrated, that he keeps on getting those calls from Grayscale, him being such a character that you can connect with through this whole thing also really brings you right into this fear and this horror that's going on, because it makes it parallels with this monstrous human figure, these really regular blue collar guys.
You said it perfectly with Ruffalo. Another thing that I liked about him, just little things of when Jake Gyllenhaal's banging on his door, it's towards the end at the right before they go to the restaurant, and he's just yelling and screaming, and he's basically threatening to kill this guy, and then he shows up in his underwear and his robe, and then suddenly boom, things change once he hears the name. And me too. I don't really know Ruffalo other than the MCU and what he does in his personal life with the politics and stuff like that. And this movie here makes me want to seek out more Mark Ruffalo movies. Like, I've seen like a lot of his early 90s stuff. Like we just said, Everybody Needs a Job. He's done a couple really crappy horror movies. You know what I mean? Which don't count. But I want to see some more dramas with this guy and see what he can do, other than being like, the goofy foil for Chris Hemsworth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another great detail in this movie is Brian Cox's character. And I don't know if you caught it, but everybody in this movie is a real guy. So in the beginning of that scene where they're about to go on television and take the call, the other guy in the scene with Brian Cox says something like, "I saw your Star Trek episode." And the moment he said that, I said, "Oh, I got to look this guy up and figure out who." So Brian Cox's character, he was in the original Star Trek as one of the characters, as one of the side characters for some planet that they visited. And that little aside didn't need to even be in the movie, but it was there.
Wow.
He played Melvin Bello. And I think that, one of the things that we were finding as we were watching the film was that, the Arthur Lee Allen character clearly was, that's the movie seems to point towards the fact that it was Arthur Lee Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Although there was all this sort of, evidence disqualifying him as possibly being the killer. But then at the same time, you were finding out that a lot of the so-called experts were sort of unreliable, or you would get contradictory opinions. Like I think, oh God, I can't remember the guy who was the handwriting expert. He's a great character actor. He's in tons of films all the time. But then his I think they were saying that, he had a drinking problem. And so, then his protege, who's more fresh-faced, is like, don't disqualify this guy.
Yeah,
there was
the evidence that they had, the only thing they were really looking at was that one fingerprint that they found and the handwriting experts. And once you discounted that, you realize, they didn't really have any great evidence pointing to anybody. And other than the circumstantial evidence that pointed to, what was his name? Was his name
Arthur Lee Allen?
Arthur Lee Allen, yeah.
Arthur Lee Allen.
Yeah, he had a lot of circumstantial things that pointed to him, but nothing concrete.
There was nothing concrete in anyone. I mean, it was like the devil's luck. Like you just, this guy just got away with it. I mean, he got away with it in real life. They never caught the Zodiac killer. I think one of the things that terrified me were when the letters started showing up. And I had no idea that, I think I sort of knew that the original Dirty Harry movie was sort of about the Zodiac killer. It was like a spoof. The original Eastwood Dirty Harry was about the Zodiac. Yeah, I forget what they called him. They called him something else. But when he started, the Scorpio killer or something like that. Yeah. But the part where, he threatened to like shoot the school kids. Like, I'm just going to wait until a bunch of kids get off one day and I'm just going to I'm going to shoot the tires out of one of the buses. And like in 1967 or 69, this must have been like apocalyptic, Sure. It's just, it must have been inconceivable, like to think of something like that. And I remember Jake Gyllenhaal watching his son get on the bus and then he stops. He's like, no. He tells the driver, I'll drive him in today. No problem. No problem.
What made it really
his son
scary.
Is watching it on TV. Well, his son is watching it on TV, because he's trying to calm his son down. And then he turns around after the news and his son is like glued to like, wait, the guy wants to shoot school, kids. Like, what the fuck?
What was really scary to me is I know my fair share of history when it comes to serial killers and stuff like that, but the Zodiac isn't one of them. And the scene that really affected me, maybe it's because I'm a parent, is when he's got the one lady, who he messed with her tire, and he threatened to throw her baby out the window and stuff like that. It's just like, I'm not saying, this guy, how would I say this? It shows that, his lack of morals, like even when it comes to infants, that's what's really scary. You know what
Lack
I mean?
of empathy, psychopath. Yeah.
There you go.
Just a complete psychopath. Hold on a second. We got a couple comments here. We've got Tyler Gromit. What's happening, man? Thank you for stopping in. He said, looking forward to the discussion. Thank you for joining us. And we've got Frank from The Harsh Truth. What's up, man? I totally forgot you were doing this movie. One of my favorites. Frank, if you want, DM me. I'll DM you an X, the code. I'll send if you want to jump in. And actually, I'll send it to you now. He said, I grew up in the Bay Area. The Zodiac is a legend for better or worse. Yeah. I think one of the other things that terrified me was the cabbie shooting. Where those two police officers come in and say that they saw him and they just let him go right by because they put out the radio report that it was a black male. It was a black male suspect. And so when a white guy walked by, kind of hunched over and shuffling, they just let him go right past. And Ruffalo and Anthony Edwards were like, wait, what? He's like, the radio report hadn't changed by the time they had him. And they let him go.
Fincher's good with that. He does that in 7 as well. When Brad Pitt threatens the photographer that he thinks is working for the newspapers, taking pictures, and then later when they bust into John Doe's apartment, they see the developed photos of Brad Pitt, yelling and screaming at him. And there's those perfect you're clenching your fist and you're just like, damn it, you know what I mean? Those type of moments that they could have had them.
Yeah,
Except,
and then in the crawl at the end, which actually happened, they were about to drag Arthur Allen back in for questioning in '92, and he allegedly confessed, I think, to his sister or someone,
Something like
and
that. Yeah.
then when they were bringing him in, before he came in, he had a heart attack and died.
Yeah.
So like they were right there. They were like right there. They were finally about to get him, and then he dies.
that really is like the devil's luck. Like they've got him and he just dies.
Well, you know, that's where I think that's where the movie leads you. Like it was Arthur Lee Allen, and that's kind of the closure that the movie kind of gives you a little bit at the end. But it also mentions like the DNA evidence wasn't a match. So that, to me, that says, I don't know. I don't think it's Arthur Lee. If today we can't get
I don't
any
know.
DNA
This is
evidence.
like the early '70s. The DNA stuff, I don't think it was very accurate back then.
But
Yeah,
when
if you
someone
remember-
today
if you remember-
checked that,
Well, if you remember in the movies, they said they didn't even the one two police departments out of 3 didn't even have a fax machine. Like Donald Logue didn't have a fax machine. Elias Koteas didn't have a fax machine. So these guys were like so far behind the curve in terms of technology. And these were, pretty big cities. This isn't like Iowa. These are pretty big places in California, and they just didn't have. Hold on a second. We got Frank here, and he says they didn't even allow DNA evidence in the court until the 1990s. So yeah, this was before all that.
Yeah, that might have been why they were finally dragging in Arthur Allen by then.
Yeah,
maybe they finally had tested some DNA by then, and that's why they were dragging him in. I don't remember exactly why, but the confession to his relative or whatever at the end was kind of like, holy crap, they could have gotten this guy, and he just slipped through the cracks.
Now,
And the other implication too is like, the Charles Fleischer character, and there were a bunch of other suspects they didn't even put in the movie. Some of them probably killed people too. It just, they weren't the Zodiac killer.
Yeah.
It was like, holy crap, how many people murder people for a hobby out there? Scary.
Has anybody here watched Fincher's series Mindhunter on Netflix? If anybody has Netflix, if you don't mind it, this kind of stuff, it's fantastic. And it's the story of how the FBI's behavioral science unit was kind of created.
Oh, I think I read a book called Mindhunter. I think it's based on that book, isn't it?
Yeah.
I read the book. It's pretty good.
What ended up happening was the FBI was originally created to hunt down people like John Dillinger, like, hey, I found a dead body. He's been stabbed 50 times. He probably slept with someone's wife. He slept with my wife, so I killed him. Boom. He cheated me in business or something, so I killed him. Boom. But then as time progresses into the 60s, we start to get this stuff like Manson and like Ed Gein and like the co-ed killer and like people, like it's like extreme violence between strangers. Yeah, you start to get people like that. And so they had to revamp their methods and how to, deal with these sorts of things. And it's about that. One, it's about how the FBI would go into the prisons and interview these guys that they had already captured, but then also, help the police solve these very extreme cases.
Well, they developed the profile. They developed a profiling system. So the idea where you would look at the murder and see the various patterns and then sort of extrapolate a persona that, a mentally ill persona that had committed the atrocities. And,
it's fantastic. It's some of Fincher's finest work. If you get a chance, and Mindhunters, fantastic. I think another scene that got me was when Anthony Edwards just quit.
Yeah.
He's just like, I can't be on call anymore. Like, I think he was going into like fraud, like doing like paperwork kind of police where he just burnt out.
He couldn't do it anymore.
year after year after year. Go ahead, Mike.
It also shows the toll that was taken on everyone's life. This entire Zodiac situation with this movie, and that goes what Tony was saying with all these multiple killers, not even Zodiac. And you were saying at the beginning, Werewolf, about once you start getting into all these psychopaths and people who could be the Zodiac and dealing with all that negativity in their lives, and the to become obsessed with it, the tendency to become obsessed with it, as you saw all these characters and these cops, and they were becoming obsessed with it. It was hurting their marriages, hurting their families, and they just were really breaking down. And then real quick about the DNA thing, I was reading on Wikipedia. It wasn't in the movie, but on Wikipedia, they were doing DNA stuff in 2002, and it was no match to that. So that's what that's what my awkward DNA talk was. So I thought that the movie was leading you more towards the Arthur Lee, but if you really want to go there, there's no DNA match, so it's a problem. He's not exonerated, but it's definitely not. I
think Arthur Lee killed somebody. He just may not have been the Zodiac.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
One of the creepiest scenes is where they get the search warrant for his trailer.
Yeah, he's got like a squirrel in a cage or something.
He's got squirrels running around, squirrels caged. He's got like extreme porn magazines. He's got a huge dildo right by the bed. You're like, what the fuck is going on with these
I was
people?
picturing something. It was giving me like a weird Texas Chainsaw Massacre feel. You know what I mean? With the animals caged up and just the weird stuff all over the apartment.
Can you imagine what that must have smelled like?
Oh, then that's one thing that Fincher is really good with. How he is behind the camera. You felt hot inside that trailer, just the way the light shone through the windows and through the curtains, and just like you could see the heat, basically on the film in that scene. And that helps. Like, Mike, you and me, we really love Carpenter's The Thing. You watch that, you feel cold. You know what I mean? Watching that, and that scene in the trailer, like you said, you could probably smell it too. And if there's all those animals, I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of carcasses in there too, and they're just in that heat.
And you got to wonder too if some of this Zodiac, part of the reason he got away is back then some of these cops must have, when they had to go into a situation like that, they just say to themselves, I don't want to do any more of this. You know what I mean? Like they're just like, there's probably nothing here. Let's just move on to something else. I want to search like a clean place where I can find a bloody knife right on the table. I don't want to sort through squirrel poop in order to find any clues. I just want to get the hell out of here. And I think there's a lot of that in real life.
This doesn't work like Seven. It doesn't work like Silence of the Lambs.
Right.
It's different, and it's real. And the killers, I think they're more evil than what you typically see in, these sort of portrayals of serial killers. Hannibal Lecter, especially if you see him by Mads Mikkelsen. For some reason, you end up rooting for Mads Mikkelsen. I don't know how it works, but the writing is just so good that you're rooting for Mads Mikkelsen. You're like, get him, But there's a universe of difference between these, sort of. Hollywood portrayals of these, people that they've turned into anti-heroes, and just this absolute evil that everyday people are forced to confront or become victims of. I think it's important to recognize the difference. There's humor in this, but it's sparse, and as these police officers, sort of step away and say, that's it. I've had enough. It's been too many years. Evidence has been lost. The trail's gone cold. There have already been 200 murders since, Zodiac last did something. You see Jake Gyllenhaal sort of pick up the ball. And what does it do? It ruins his life.
Yeah.
It ruins. Yeah. He meets a totally nice girl in Chloe Sevigny. She does a fantastic job as this, she's just a regular woman. She just wants to have a regular family, and she wants to, have a simple, small life, with a picket fence, so to speak. And it destroys his marriage because he becomes obsessed with it. Yeah. Yep. She ends up taking the kids. That's what it says at the end of the movie. Like Robert Graysmith, he has a healthy relationship with his kids, but
Yeah,
it cost
I
him his
picked that up
marriage.
too.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it just
it cost him his
literally just said
marriage.
the kids. Yeah, it didn't say anything
Mhm.
about Chloe's character at all. Oh.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Another great thing about this movie and the screenplay is you can see the bigger world outside the story you're watching. So in a lot of movies, they're hyper focused on the characters and the plot to the point at which there's almost nothing outside of that.
Mm.
This, you really feel like there's a bigger world going on because you're jumping in time, because all these characters have all these disparate problems. That sort of lack of focus just on the Zodiac is really evident. The thing, like, there's been 200 murders since this all started. Like, you can see that life is going on in and around this story. And that is a big part of what's lacking in current movies today. People don't bother to script that kind of stuff anymore. They're too lazy to add that detail. It's just all about, whoever the star is, he gets all the lines, everything's about him, and it makes it a much smaller universe.
Kraken says, I thought Ted Cruz was the Zodiac, but I think he's disavowed that. I think that was about 5 years ago. He did step up and say unequivocally, just like Tony did, that he is not the Zodiac killer. So
Neither
we're
one.
we're all in good company. I think the Zodiac killer is long gone by now. Probably off to a worse place. Mike, you were going to say something?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think it really makes me think about the movie differently. This other world going outside. And I think it's ballsy to do that. Because you risk taking your audience losing focus, losing their attention, and you risk all that. So it was really ballsy, and I think he very much pulled it off. And also that this also shows you that real life is not like Columbo. The cops don't get their man,
right.
And it's sloppy, it's political, it's bureaucratic, and people don't give a shit after a while,
Yeah, even the best people, and I think that's probably a healthy defense mechanism. You have to know when to pull back, and say, look, I've done everything I can, but it's not my life. I think in a way it sort of also destroys Robert Downey Jr.'s character. Getting involved in it to the extent that he did, and then the Zodiac's after him. You saw at the end of the movie, that guy, Majot, who was in the car in the shooting in the first murder scene. It's been, 23 years? He doesn't look so good.
No.
He doesn't look so good. He doesn't look like his life has really, it looks like it ruined his life. He's still afraid. He's still, he's got that, PTSD sort of look about him, like he's looking over his shoulder all the time. It's, there's real impact to these things. Hold on a second. We got Tex. What's happening, man? Love this movie. I still think the Zodiac killer was more than one person. That's an interesting theory and entirely possible. I suppose I've never heard of serial killer teams. But if you watch in the second season of Mindhunter, it focuses on the Atlanta child killer. And they ended up arresting someone. But to this day, a lot of people feel that it was more than one person committing those crimes.
There was a team. I can't remember all the details, but it was like the profile was like there was a dominant personality and then like a guy who was his assistant, like submissive. He would just do whatever he wanted. There's also been like not husband and wife, but boyfriend and girlfriend team.
Remember the DC sniper?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Lee Boy. Yeah,
I knew one of the victims of the DC sniper.
Did you really?
I was watching television, and his picture came up, and I turned it up. It was just like something out of a movie. I turned up the sound. It was like he was dead. He had gone down to DC, stopped at a gas station, and he got shot by the DC sniper. It was horrible.
I remember that. Remember they had to pull the tarps over all the gas stations. People were getting gas under tarps so they couldn't be shot at by these fucking. We're talking about it and you struggle for words. So I can't imagine the strain as a police officer. And that's part of also what happens in Mindhunters. I don't want to go on about it too much, but you see the strain that it starts to wear on with the two FBI agents. that are part of the team. As you know, that I guess you come home and you don't want to get into it, but
Yeah.
it's impossible for it not to show.
Well, they even showed it kind of like if you pay attention, Ruffalo looks a lot different towards the end of the film. To me, he looked a lot more thin. He looked a lot more disheveled. He definitely looked like someone who didn't really give a shit about how he looked. Combing his hair. He probably doesn't shower regularly because of, and this is after that. What was he? He was fired because he was framed for maybe writing one of the Zodiac
They
letters.
thought they suspected him of writing a Zodiac letter.
So it just
he was eventually cleared, but yeah,
and his just
but it ruined his career.
You could see the way he looked and presented himself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the smartest one was Anthony Edwards. He got the hell out of there because he knew it would take him down that road.
And you can't imagine what a betrayal that must have felt like after spending years on that case, to be accused of writing a fucking Zodiac letter, to boost your what,
And and circling back to Robert Downey Jr.'s character, his character starts drinking more excessively after he has to go. Remember, he has to go to the meeting, and that's when he gets the gun, and that's where I see his character going right down the tubes at that point, because it impacts him.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
I was going to say, doing a little Wikipedia and looking into the situation. So I find it interesting that that inspector that Ruffalo plays was a really flamboyant guy, big personality, flamboyant guy. And he was sending letters to the newspaper saying how great he was because he liked the attention. But they really played the character totally different, more this blue collar, down to earth guy. Fincher made that decision to really take his character in a different direction. So I thought that was really interesting backstory.
At this point, I don't know if I'm going to. I'm sort of tempted to reread this. And Gray Smith wrote a second book where he said he revealed who the real killer was, even though no one was ever brought to justice. I don't remember how this ends. I think I read this close to 15 years ago, around the time that the movie came out, after I'd seen it for the first time. And I'm surprised how many Fincher fans haven't seen this one. Yeah, I really like. I'm a huge David Fincher fan. Have you seen Zodiac? No, I haven't gotten to that one yet. You're like, fuck, man. You're like missing the best one he's ever done. But I'm going to see. Maybe I'll see if I can find a used copy on Amazon of the second book that he wrote, and see who he says the killer was. Because I mean, this is a fast-paced book. This is not a slow, methodical, slog. In any way, shape, or form.
Maybe that's where Fincher gets his pacing for this thing. But circling back to Ruffalo's character, let me ask you guys, what accent do you think Ruffalo's doing in that movie?
I have no idea.
Oh, I don't know.
Because it sounds more like an East Coast accent to me. It sounds almost, I want to say New York or some sort of Brooklynite accent, but I don't know. It just struck me as odd when I was watching it. I'm like, what the hell kind of accent is he doing? Like, there's not a lot of strong accents out west that you can identify unless you're like, talking about Texas or Southern or something like that. But he's doing something. And I don't know if you got the Wikipedia entry up. I wonder what area of the country that cop was from. Maybe he was doing that on purpose.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe it was from somewhere else. Maybe it was from, but yeah, it definitely didn't feel California centric. Actually, you could have put that in any kind of city. I thought,
I was just looking here.
It says Tosi, he was from the San Francisco Police Department. So
yeah, Ruffalo's accent really threw me for a few minutes right at the beginning. But again, his performance is so strong, you just kind of like go with it.
Yeah, I'm the world's worst accent hunter, so to speak. But I do wish And usually when you see Donald Logue, you get a great performance. Usually when you see Elias Koteas, you always get a good performance. Anthony Edwards, you don't see him very much, but he's always been good. Jake Gyllenhaal, yeah, usually a really pretty solid performer. But again, I think Ruffalo just kind of blew me away with how good he was in this. And I wish they would get back to, and maybe they will. Maybe we're at that point, the high water mark, and then we'll start to get back into actual films again instead of making everything like a franchise or a blockbuster. I'd like to get back into just making a one-off film. That would be cool. That would
Here's
be
another question. I got another question for you guys. Donald Logue in this movie.
Yes.
Did they put him in a fat suit? Did they fatten him up, or was he actually that heavy?
No, that's Donald Logue, bro.
Donald Logue he's a pudgy guy. The reason why I think he looks pudgier is because he's clean shaven. He usually almost always has facial hair.
He has the long greasy hair, or he's wearing a biker
jacket
or something like that, or he's getting his hand cut off by Wesley Snipes.
I thought maybe they gave him a bigger face to be closer to the guy he was playing, but I wasn't.
I think he's got a face that's consumed a lot of Guinness. That would be my guess. That would be my.
He's always had like a super round, like I call it like the Cabbage Patch style face. He's got a super round head with the puffy cheeks, and usually he has facial hair covering it, like Blade or something like that. But Mike, you like the TV show Gotham? He's in that, and his face is very round in that. So I think it's just great because he got no beard.
And he's always wearing like a trench coat or like a baggy sport coat, to kind of hide the cop bulge, the donut bulge.
It was fun seeing him like not kind of play a slime ball for once. You know what I mean? Because usually he's like those slimy type of characters.
Really great casting, really great script. I think it is Fincher's best. Actually, it's a 7-star script considering how many small pieces they put together in this and still hold your attention for the entirety of the movie. I love watching this. At some point, I'm just going to buy it on a Blu-ray because I want to see the director's
cut. There is a director's cut. I know that's like 15, 20 minutes longer.
And I want to see the behind the scenes. I want to see the behind the scenes. So I've got to get this on Blu-ray. I mean, nothing against this. Fine DVD that I just watched, but it doesn't have any of the features. And for this kind of movie, I want all the features.
Yeah, because I read. Okay.
Texas saying Frank is from the Bay Area. Maybe he was a Zodiac. Now that I think about it, Frank has relocated to Illinois, so it's entirely possible that he may not want to be seen out there again anymore. And Frank says that Ruffalo is from Wisconsin. So I don't know what anybody from Wisconsin sounds like. I don't know anything about that one. Eric, you were going to say something?
Oh, I was reading on Wikipedia about some behind the scenes stuff. They wanted Fincher to cut a lot out of this film because I guess it was damn near 3 hours long. And he was so adamant, like they were going back and forth. So that's why there is that director's cut that's like 2 hours and like 40 minutes or something like that. So he gave a little bit, but Fincher seems like one of those guys, like after, he got screwed over by 20th Century Fox and Alien 3, and they changed everything on him as he was making the movie. Like I think he's not one of those guys because he's a big enough name where he puts his foot down. He's like, no, it's my way or we're not making the movie,
Tech says Gone Girl is my favorite Fincher flick. That is an extremely disturbing film with Ben Affleck. Yeah, that's a good one. All right. Is there any part of this film? I mean, because God knows there are a million parts, and if you want to talk about them, let's talk about them. No problem. I'm not pushing. But is there any part of this film that you would like to discuss that we have not gotten into?
I actually liked Jake Gyllenhaal. Like he wasn't a cop. I was thinking, because I've seen the poster, so I'm thinking the 3 gentlemen on the cover, they're going to be detectives or possibly a victim or whatever. And he's just some schlub who makes political cartoons.
It's a cartoonist.
And he just gets obsessed at first, helping Robert Downey Jr.'s character. And by the end, he's the one that, air quotes, solves everything just by, putting 2 and 2 together because he's good at puzzles and little things like that. And I just thought his performance, because Gyllenhaal for me can be hit and miss. He can be really good. And then sometimes he makes, the cheesy. He got started in comedies as well. You know what I mean? But he's really good, but he's also really subtle in this, and that's what I think it makes his performance so good.
All right. I think one of the things that we didn't talk about is how good the fucking soundtrack is in this. Holy shit, like one song
Oh,
after
yeah,
another.
yeah.
It's like Santana, and then it's like Marvin Gaye doing Inner City Blues, and then that song Hurly Burly Man, and then they go into like Steely Dan. It's a ripping soundtrack. Ripping. I love it. Love it. Can't get enough. Is there anything that anybody else that we did not touch on? Tony, Mike?
I like the final scene, spoilers, that shot of, Gyllenhaal earlier in the movie says, I just need to like look him in the eye kind of thing.
Yeah.
Kind of know that he did it or didn't do it. And they have that scene, and that's your closure. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah.
I like that. There wasn't any kind of crazy chase at the end or anything like that. It was just a good way to sort of wrap it up and say, okay, do you think it's him or not? And I think for Gyllenhaal, he's almost too handsome for the role that he's playing. That would be my only criticism of the movie, is they should have sort of nerded him up a little bit, given him glasses or something. And sort of, how like they take pretty girls and they mouse them up so they can, later in the movie make them really good looking and
ponytails and overalls. Yeah.
They should have done that with Jake Gyllenhaal a little bit, giving him like sloppier clothes or something, maybe scraggly beard, just
some
to make
glasses, thick glasses.
Yeah, just to make him like not as handsome.
Make him look like one of us.
I don't know what you're talking about, but
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot. Yeah, I'm the only one who hasn't been walking the runway. My bad.
No, it's okay, Mike. I get it.
I like the scene on the boat with Robert Downey Jr. and Gyllenhaal. I thought it was good for a couple of reasons. One, it passes the torch to Gyllenhaal, right? And and that's Robert Downey Jr.'s last scene, and now you're going to run with this alone. So it effectively does that. It could have been, drunk scene, cliched, but Robert Downey Jr., it was just there. His big, stupid legs hanging out, crossed legs with his robe. He plays the drunk out of it so well, but not cartoony. And he gets nasty, just like a drunk, right? He gets nasty with them too. And says, "What have you done?" And it was funny. He just hits all the right note, and it was very good. Very good.
One last thing I want to throw out there is the scene Tony talked about at the very end where they finally meet. You know what I mean? Like 10
stare down.
However many years later. It's not just, Gyllenhaal's like, because it's pretty much just body language. There's like maybe one or two lines that John Carroll Lynch says, but the way he looks at Gyllenhaal and just be like, "That's right, I got away with it, kid." You know what I mean? He's like, "You tried. What can I do for you? How can I help you?" That type of thing. Again, he's such an underrated actor, and all he did was really stare. He didn't even stare at Jake Gyllenhaal. He just looked at him and gave him like a, "Sorry, dude, I got away with it." Look,
there are no over-the-top performances of this, and it would be really easy to fall into that trap. It would be really easy, and I'm especially thinking of the Brian Cox scene with the phone call, where you get the guy just starts screaming in the middle of the call. You're like, "What the hell is?" And it turns out not to be. It's like some guy from a psychiatric hospital who had a free dime or something like that, just decided to call in. But it's just, there are no everything is just so measured for something so absolutely horrible.
Yeah,
it's what you get when you mix the perfect cast of the perfect cast of actors with the perfect director. Because you said no over the top performances. If you know Charles Fleischer, and not Roger Rabbit withstanding, he's very over the top in a lot of his roles, and he is very subtle and creepy. This is not the Charles Fleischer I know, and that's what I really liked and appreciated, and was very creeped out. And again, Fincher behind the camera. You have it's kind of a cliche, but you have that close up on Gyllenhaal, and you have Fleischer behind him, and then Gyllenhaal's just clicking the dates and stuff like that, and he's like, "Okay, it's time to get out of here."
Yeah,
and it's just
Fleischer's it's too late. Movie. It's too late.
Fleischer's in the movie. What, 5 minutes? if that. And that's the scene that sticks with me. 5 minutes and 2 hours and 17 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that the scene with Robert Downey Jr. on the boat, I really thought for a moment Jake Gyllenhaal was going to get him into rehab, and they were going to team up. And that's the way it's paced. That's the way it's shot. It leads you down to believe that, yes, this is going to be just like you've seen it a million times. Robert Downey Jr. is going to come back and he's going to solve the mystery. But nope. And that's the surprise. Like, holy crap, he's leaving. He's not helping him at all.
Yeah.
And the last time we see him, I think we see him drinking. Is he at a bar? And does he have an oxygen tank with him?
Yeah, he has an oxygen tank.
Okay.
Yeah, he was dead by the time they made this movie. That guy.
He sees that Gyllenhaal has made it to, like the television networks, and he's writing the book, and he's just like, "You fucking crazy kid, you fucking did it." He's kind of smiling. He's like, "You know what, you crazy bastard, you actually did it. Good for you."
And I had another thought about that Robert Downey Jr. character. Since he did die before they made this movie, he could be the character that they decided to dump off a lot of like negative stuff on, because he was dead, and they could kind of get away with that more than, say, a character that was still alive. So I'm wondering if that was a conscious decision on Fincher or the screenwriter's part. Like, well, I can't really make Mark Ruffalo's character too bad, or the other cop characters, or Jake Gyllenhaal, because all those guys are alive and they might sue us. But I could do it to Robert Downey Jr.'s character because he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
That anybody was portrayed overly in an overly negative way. I think they're just all portrayed as people who sort of imploded on this case in one form or another.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were just regular people put in these awful positions, and one by one, they all just sort of self-destructed in a way, just over the grind, over the years. I thought it was respectfully done. I mean, even with Downey's character, I thought it was respectfully done. I didn't necessarily have a problem with it. He had a drinking problem, And now I'm sort of curious.
I didn't think it was over the top. I just wonder if they accentuated it more because he was dead, and they could feel that they could get away with more with his character.
The next time we're all together, I'll bring the aqua velvas. How's that? So we'll all have an aqua velva, and all will be well.
That sounds great.
All right, let's get to the part in the scene where we rate the film. This channel has a rating system that goes from 0 to 5 up by half. So 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5, all the way to 5. So 0, for example, would be I'd rather pick scabs off a stranger than watch this movie again, all the way to 5, which is this is the journey, this is the destination, this is why I watch films in the first place. Tony G., a local Piney and author of The Pineys, what would you give David Fincher's Zodiac?
I can find barely anything wrong with this movie, if at all. I got to give it a 5.
Okay, a 5. That's very straightforward and to the point. Sounds good. Michael James from the Divine Will Era YouTube channel. What do you got for us? Give us
I likewise, Tony, I can't find anything wrong with this film, but I'm going to give it a 4.5 just because.
Be contrary.
Just because I think there's better movies out there.
I don't know what they are, but they must be.
I can't think of any at this moment, but I want to reserve my 5 for another time. So 4.5.
The Snobatorium has spoken. Okay. Eric, what do you got for us? David Fincher's Zodiac.
Well, there's no snobbing and there's no scab picking here. I'm definitely going for a 5. Yeah. Should I take that personal? No, I'm going for a 5. Like I said, I've enjoyed all of Fincher's earlier works. This is so good from beginning to end. Like I said, perfect cast of actors, perfect director. And I kind of like what Tony said, 2 hours and 20 minutes. I don't have time for this. No, it flowed. Boom, boom, boom. The only reason why it took me a couple of days because my dumbass decided to start it at like 9:30, last night, and I'm like, nope, can't do it. So, but I finished the majority of it today, and I'm like, wow, I probably could have zoomed through it last night. It was that good, and it makes me want to now go back and rewatch the Fincher films I haven't seen in a long time, like Panic Room, and things like The Game. And now I want to go out and see The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and other things of his that I haven't. So I'm giving it a 5.
All right, sounds good. I am going with a 5. I can detect no flaw. Excellent cast, excellent performances, excellent script, excellent direction, extraordinarily moody. And when there is comedy, it's so sort of limited. You're like, okay, it's like a half a second of levity, and then it just gets right back down into
Animal Crackers.
Animal Crackers. When Gyllenhaal at the end shows up to Ruffalo's house and is like, "Where's my gun?" And his wife. That's not the funny part. What was funny to me is his wife. She just goes back, like, turns over and goes back to sleep. She's like, they're both fucking idiots.
She's used to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going back to bed. I'm done with all this. Just it's scary. It's scary, and it's an interesting expose on evil, real evil. Not the kind that you see. Yeah, not the kind that you see portrayed by Anthony Hopkins or whoever. Whatever movie you're watching, it's real shit. And to do it so well, you could screw up a movie like this really easily. And instead, they made a diamond out of it. So, yeah, 5. Okay, Tony D, plug something. What do you got for us?
As always, I'm promoting the Pineys, books 1 through 17 at Amazon.com. I will be at the Jersey Shore Collectors Con at the Showboat Casino in Atlantic City this weekend from 10 to 6. So stop on by on Saturday. It's from 10 to 6. And I'm working on the Pineys book 18.
Okay. Tony, just give him a quick 30-second thing on what the Pineys is.
Oh, the Pineys is about a family of hunters that hunt the kin of the Jersey Devil. So the premise is Mother Leeds. See, I'm wearing a Jersey Devil shirt. Mother Leeds, the mother of the Jersey Devil, was a witch, and in the 1700s, she opened the portals of hell and flooded the Pine Barrens with devils. But in the neighboring village of Abe's Hat, New Jersey, the villagers formed a secret hunting society to hunt down the devils and send them back to hell. And their ancestors continue the hunt to this day. So that's with that premise, I delve into South Jersey folklore, the Jersey Devil, and whatnot.
We are, that is if you're from another area, the Jersey Devil is our Bigfoot. So that's what we have there. So other people have the Loch Ness Monster. We have Mother Leeds' 13th child.
It's New Jersey's official state demon.
Yeah.
Well, Tony,
sounds like New Jersey to me.
Are those available on Amazon, or where could I get those?
They're all available on Amazon. Thank you for reminding me. And yes, and it's what the hockey team is named after as well.
That's true, the Jersey Devils. Yeah, that's right. All right, Michael James from the Divine Will Era here during Holy Week. What do you got for us? What's coming up?
Well, it is Holy Week. Easter is coming up. It's time for everyone to get right with God. And if you want some help getting right with God, we have some spiritual content for you. Vatican theologian Joseph Iannuzzi. We also have Honest God Talk podcast. Check us out.
Are you going to have like a 24-hour...
On Holy Thursday, it's a 24-hour prayer thing going on with lots of volunteers. It's about these hours of the Passion, the entire 24 hours that Jesus spent from the Last Supper to his crucifixion, this meditation. What was every hour like? It's pretty intense, and it's really beautiful prayers. We like doing this every Holy Thursday, starting at 5 p.m., going all the way up to 5 p.m. the next day.
And, for if you're not in the know, like Holy Thursday is the day of the Last Supper. Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, it's, pretty important day. Eric, what do you got for us?
Hey, Internet, Eric here is my YouTube channel. unless I have a live stream planned. Every month on this channel is a specific theme of movies that I will be discussing. Like for February, I did Fantastical February. I did nothing but fantasy movies, swords and sandals, stuff like that. This month is Animated April. It's nothing but animated films or films that somehow deal with animation. Like Charles Fleischer was in the Zodiac. Me and my daughter, and she's going to help me a lot this month. We're going to be discussing like films like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I started out with the movie Cool World from Ralph Bakshi. It does not hold up. But we're also going to be getting into things like from what was it? I think it's 1977. Me and my daughter are going to do Rankin and Bass's The Hobbit. She's never seen that, so we're going to discuss films like that. Other things she wants to see, Super Mario Brothers, that usual kid stuff. But I'm going to throw in some Don Bluth films because I'm a sucker for Don Bluth animation. And then next month is a theme that I 100% ripped off from Mr. Mike there, Marvelous May. It is Marvel movies that have nothing to do with the MCU. So perhaps like Dolph Lundgren's Punisher, some of the X-Men films, maybe Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man thrown in there for good measure, or anything else I can find. I know there's a really disliked movie about Man-Thing that I saw on Tubi, and I figured, you know what, I got to throw in at least one schlock movie, whether Mike likes it or not. I'm going to throw in that. I've never seen it, but I'm sure it's awful, but that'll be in there. So Marvelous May will be next.
I can save you the trouble right now and tell you it's awful, but I know that is going to have no effect. So carry on. All right, for this channel here, I have released a video 4 days ago, reviewing season 5 of The Chosen, The Last Supper. So that's up on my YouTube channel, so go check that out. I'm also going to be covering what has exploded in nerd Twitter with the Harry Potter TV series, and that confirmation, which has just, I think everybody has just lost the plot. Yep. From on one side, if you're protesting because you don't like because J.K. Rowling, or people that are part of the series because Rowling is, whoever politically they think she is because of the trans issue, all the way to people on the other side that don't like, the casting of Severus Snape, a year before a single thing has been filmed. I think everybody is just like taking the $20 that they spend on HBO way too seriously. It's $20 on HBO. Have some sense of fucking proportion, okay, as to what your actual contribution is. Relax. So I'm going to be following up with more of that. We just got this out. This weekend coming up, I'm going to be seeing Ryan Coogler's Sinners, which is a new vampire film dropping this weekend.
Michael B. Jordan.
So Michael B. Jordan. I'm going to be getting with Haley Stanfield. I'm going to be getting my review up on that. I'm also going to be getting my review up on a series that I just finished a few days ago on Prime. That was #1 over the Lenten season, House of David, which I enjoyed very much. Season 1 of House of David. I thought that was fantastic. So that'll be up this weekend as well. So it'll be a busy weekend for me during the Easter weekend. And then next week, I'm looking at, and I think I'm going to stick with it. I'm looking, if you guys would like to join me, you're more than welcome. I'm looking at, it's on Tubi or Pluto TV, I can't remember. I'm looking at Antoine Fuqua's The Equalizer with Denzel Washington. Just because it's just fantastic. Huh?
The first one?
Oh, the first one.
Okay.
The first one. Antoine Fuqua's The Equalizer with Denzel Washington, which is just an amazing franchise. I would watch Denzel Washington read out of the phone book if he was doing it. And this is no exception. Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. Sometimes when I get bored, he's one of those actors that I'll just Google interviews because he's such an entertaining interview, whether he's being serious or comedic.
Yeah.
I love Denzel.
He had a great interview. It's like a 3-minute clip on YouTube one time where somebody came to visit him. It was like Nelson Mandela. And so, of course, Nelson Mandela went to go visit him over at his house when he came to America. And so he threw a party, and like Sylvester Stallone, like is his next door neighbor or something, but he forgot to invite him. So like Stallone is like looking outside the gate, like what's going on? And he's like, do you want to come in? He's like, yeah, come on, let me in. And Stallone came in, but the way he told it was pretty funny. So
yeah, he's great. There's another story where he talks about he's filming I don't know I think it might have been Philadelphia. There's this man who lives across the street. He's half deaf, he's half blind, but he would always come out and yell and interrupt the production, like asking people if they wanted coffee. He'd sit down in his lawn chair while they're filming. And Denzel got so attached to the older guy. I think he invited him to the premiere, and he showed up in like a suit and tie. Couldn't hear anything. He had to have somebody, tell him, help him know what's going on in the movie. But yeah, that's another funny Denzel story.
So we will be looking at Antoine Fuqua's The Equalizer next week. So all are welcome to join. All right, that is it for me. Hold on a second. We've got Frank, last couple comments saying, good show. Thank you very much. And hey, Slasher Fred is here. The classic Dirty Harry was one of the Veru. Well, it was based on the Zodiac killer. So, that's interesting. All right, my thanks to Tony D, the local Piney, who is not the Zodiac killer. My thanks to Michael James from the Divine Will Era YouTube channel. And my thanks to Eric from Hey Internet. Eric here. We will see you all in the next video. All right, my thanks to everyone in the chat. Take care, everyone. God bless you. All the best.
Good night.
Cheers.
Good night.
Hey, everybody. This is the American Werewolf. Thanks for stopping by. Like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button.